My brother-in-law just told my wife he is in love with her. Anyway, yesterday my brother-in-law out of the blue asks my wife if she can meet him for lunch. There is something he needs to talk to her about. My wife tells me about it before accepting and asks if it might have something to do with my sister. Maybe they are having problems and he wants to discuss with another woman. I find it odd, but I tell her to go find out. So she accepts and they meet for lunch at a place near her office the next day. That's where he tells her that he is in love with her. He lays it on thick, how beautiful she is, how she makes him feel, how he would treat her if she were his, how it was love at first sight, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, this man is married to my sister and has 2 kids. He and my wife had a friendly relationship. Our families see each other often as we are a close family. He does text her frequently, but there was nothing overly sexual. My brother-in-law texts and calls my mom too. So none of us thought anything of it. I want to stop a moment and emphasize that my wife isn't cheating on me with him. My wife and I share an iPad and I see every one of her texts from there. We are also looking at each other's phones all the time, so none of that is going on. So she doesn't let him finish, walks out and calls me immediately to tell me what happened. While she is on the phone with me, the texts from him start. He didn't mean it, he thinks it's only infatuation, blah, blah, blah. She leaves work early to come home to talk to me about this and her phone is blowing up the entire time with calls and texts from him. I tell her to answer and she put him on speaker so I can hear. He's crying, begging not to tell my sister. Apparently when we were together this past weekend he thought that she was flirting with him and that he thought they had a moment when they were alone in our kitchen. Now, my wife is a major ball buster and I suppose I can see how that can be taken as flirting. He asks if she told me, to which I answer yes as I am on speaker. Then he starts begging me. This went on a while. My main question was whether he had cheated on my sister before. He said no, swore on his kids' lives. It's just my wife, he said I should understand. So I'm done listening at that point and told him I wasn't going to do anything tonight and I would call him tomorrow. That's where we are right now and I really don't know what to do. My wife says drive over there right now and tell my sister, but the idea of wrecking my sister's family is killing me. Thinking about what it will do to my nieces makes me want to vomit. I know the right thing to do is tell my sister, but I'm also thinking about my wife as well. It's not her fault, but there is sure to be resentment toward her from my family. Even if my sister doesn't divorce him and they reconcile, I can't see how we are ever together again like we were before, if at all. This whole episode can tear my family apart. I don't give a shit about him. He tried to destroy my family, but I do care about everyone else. I don't know what to do. Any advice will help. Update 1. So everyone that told me last night that I couldn't wait to tell my sister was right. A little after 12 last night I get a call from my sister and says that she has to tell me that my wife tried to begin an affair with her husband. So he tried to pin it on her. I told her that's not the case and I will be right over. So I get on the phone, wake my mother and father, tell them what's going on, wake my younger brother, tell him. My mom and dad head to my sister's to sit with their kids and my brother comes to our house to sit with ours and my wife and I head over. My sister is out in the front porch with my brother-in-law when we get there. He looks beaten, he knows we have texts and voicemail. I really don't know what he was hoping to accomplish. My wife gives my sister her phone, she sees the texts, listens to the voicemails and he starts sobbing before she can say anything. My brother-in-law is a firefighter, a big tough guy, so this is a scene. My sister is pretty tough, she tells him to stop it, pack a bag and go. She can't stand to look at him. There's more begging but she has no patience for it. So my sister walks off to talk with my wife. I see them hugging, so at least I feel like they are okay. They have actually been friends since college. I met my wife through my sister. So they are tight. The thought of this wrecking her friendship had been weighing on me. This leaves me with my brother-in-law. He's broken, so I feel more sympathy than anger. He says he's sorry, he just couldn't help it. It's not hard to fall in love with my wife, so I get it, but damn man. He eventually picks himself up and leaves. So we are there all night. My sister starts asking my wife why her husband would think any of this would work out. He had to have some reason to believe that she felt the same way. My sister says they hadn't been having problems. Everything was as it had always been. My wife is crying at this point and says there's nothing you haven't seen. She gives my sister her phone again and they read every text ever sent over the past 2 years, nothing there. My wife was just herself. She has a playful personality and so does my brother-in-law, so they tease each other. She does the same to my mom and younger brother as well. The only thing she could think of was the moment in the kitchen this past weekend he referenced. They both went for the fridge at the same time and they playfully jostled for who would get there first. He lets her win, but he reaches around her waist to get a beer slowly, and she did feel the way that he did it was little inappropriate. She says she should have called him on it but didn't want to make it a big thing. She feels maybe the fact that she didn't give him hope. My sister doesn't blame her, so at least that's good. So then my sister starts going through his MacBook to see what else she doesn't know about. She's angry and frantic at this point. She guesses the password, starts searching and finds a lot of pictures of my wife on that computer. They went back years and always isolated on just her. We had gone as couples to the Caribbean a few years earlier. My wife wore a bikini, she usually doesn't, but since it was adults only she did. There were probably 50 of her in that bathing suit. So he's been secretly snapping these for years. Does this now enter retraining order territory? This has taken a creepy turn. I'll update when I have more. Comments. Mace 1. The fact that you so casually said you wouldn't do anything tonight and you would call him tomorrow and not tell your sister ASAP is highly suspect. Can't imagine a situation where any man would want to have lunch with my wife alone to share something with her and I'd be okay with that. You really said wait until tomorrow after he professed their undying love to your wife? Something is afoot and there is more to this story you're not sharing. We are all pretty close. My sister and my wife are college friends and we are family. I know this guy well, he's not a stranger. I just needed some time to process. My whole life just changed. Yo damn, he does text her frequently but there was nothing overly sexual, so since the constant text to your wife from your sister's husband were only a bit sexual you let it slide? Anyways, I can't believe you didn't go straight to your sister's tell her and beat his ass. The texts never cross the line. I see all of them and he knows that. We are family, it never occurred to me or my wife that things could take this turn. Like I said, my wife is a ball buster and she treated him like a brother, like family. Update 2. I've shared with my wife many of your comments. It makes her feel better that virtually everyone here holds her blameless. It makes her feel better, so thank you. Unfortunately, the mess continues. My sister agreed to talk to her husband last night and let him explain. She puts my wife on FaceTime during this conversation so there will be no lying. I'm listening in as well off camera. My sister is also recording the whole thing. He admits he's been obsessed with my wife for years. It started the day he met her. My wife and I were dating at the time, but he met my wife before he met me. Like I said, my wife and sister are longtime friends and my sister wanted to introduce her boyfriend to her friends. He thought it was only physical for a while, but over time he knew it was more. My sister nearly kicks him out right there but listens a little more and she eventually asks what made him think that my wife would leave me for him. He answers that there is obviously mutual attraction and he figured it would begin as an affair and then things would progress from there. My wife and sister explode at that point, a lot of cussing, a lot of screaming. Phone call is over, my wife hangs up because at this point she is concerned for me. She's shaken and distraught, assures me the attraction was one-sided. I never thought it wasn't. Even if she did find him physically attractive, I know she would never act on it. She's just not the type. Early on in our relationship she caught me admiring her as she was dressing, asked if I liked what I saw before her face turned cold and told me never to fuck up or I'd never see it again. She meant it, she's serious about trust. Anyway, I knew my brother-in-law was a little CCKY, but my god, I never knew he thought that highly of himself to be able to pull off something like this. I talked to my sister later on and she is contacting the lawyer Monday to see what steps she can take to limit his exposure to her kids. As far as she is concerned, he is detached from reality. That's all I have for now. I'll update once the dust settles a bit. Comments. Paul and VA. My wife and I were talking about this and that's what we thought. He wanted to start an affair and then go from there. There is no way to recover from asking your sister-in-law to have an affair if the feeling isn't mutual. You've torched everything. Incredibly high-risk gambit with a low success potential. But, he would have done this sooner or later, with or without the kitchen incident. He had made comments to me many times through the years that my wife was out of my league. I would just laugh and agree, she is. I guess he thought his gamble was not so high risk. Update 3. This is likely to be my final update as I don't see much more happening after this besides divorce processings. Thanks for all the comments, they have helped my wife some with the guilt. Anyway, my brother-in-law returned home yesterday, not because my sister wants him back but because she can't legally stop him. They are done, I think he realizes that now. The lawyer tells my sister that since my brother-in-law's behavior over the past few days has been documented, there is a good chance she will be granted full custody. He doesn't seem to even want to fight her on that. My sister will be fine, any love she had for him is gone and she doesn't seem too broken up about it. The kids don't know what happened yet, but my brother-in-law was never around much anyway when the kids were home. He slept at the fire station many nights and put in a lot of overtime. But it is certain to be hard on them once they know what's going to happen. Many commenters have said that there must be more women, but as far as we can tell there hasn't been. It's really just the obsession with my wife. She has blocked his phone, but on the same night he returned home he sends my wife an email from an account he just made. It started with an apology but then took a turn. He said he never got to finish at the restaurant that day. Then he went on for paragraphs and paragraphs about all the things he loves about my wife and the desperation he felt that lead him to do what he did. He mentioned their mutual attraction again and the sexual tension that he always felt was between them. And ended with a rather large section about me. Let's just say I didn't know he had such a low opinion of me. He was quite certain that I was not satisfying my wife properly. Anyway, we sent the email to my sister and it will go to the lawyer. It might be enough to get him removed from the house. Finally, my wife isn't great, but she is doing better every day. She does blame herself for being too comfortable around my brother-in-law. She is always careful to set boundaries with other men. In case you haven't figured it out already, my wife is pretty stunning and gets a lot of male attention. But with my brother-in-law she felt safe to be herself since he was family, surely no lines would be crossed. She and my sister are cool and there doesn't appear to be any resentment, so that makes me happy. We will all be okay, it will just take time. Thanks to all who commented and voiced their support. Comments. Any decision 470, what a bomb that he threw in to blow everything up. Please take steps to secure your home and car. Recommend a restraining order so he can't come around trying to explain or convince or apologize to your wife. Hoping your sister can do what needs to be done and can move on to a better life. I don't think my brother-in-law is dangerous, just conceited. The guy was quite the ladies' man before getting married and still got plenty of attention even after. His ego is bruised. But I do have cameras and an alarm. PH 1226, thank you for sharing this sad story, it has been helpful for me. My wife has been casually pursued by a married member of my club and she is usually too surprised and modest to assume what he's after. When he first started, my wife thought it was just harmless banter, but I didn't and told her I didn't think so. As it continued, she finally realized I was right, so when I had to tell him to knock it off, she was relieved. It took 3 incidents for him to finally get the message. My wife is mad at herself because she is usually so careful. She's had so many incidents when she was younger with guys she was friendly to that ended up making unwanted advances. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Wife was sleeping with her boss in exchange for promotions and expensive gifts. I exposed their affair to his wife and HR, got them both fired, then filed for divorce. Hey everyone. I was married to my wife for 3 years before she cheated on me. My wife and I were not strangers before we started dating. We had known each other through a charity volunteer organization we both joined. And even though we weren't friends initially, we used to say hi and hello whenever we saw each other. About a year after I joined the volunteer team, I realized I was heavily crushing on her, and this pushed me to get closer. We became friends and would go out together to eat after our volunteer sessions. From there, our friendship bloomed, and my feelings for her grew. Long story short, after months of hanging out with each other, we started dating, and we married after a year and 6 months of dating. In the 1 year and 6 months, I dated my wife, I believed I knew everything about her. We had opened up to each other about our past. She insisted we open up because it was important for our relationship and marriage, and I agreed. I told her about myself, my exes, and everything she needed to know, and she did the same. But some years down the line, I realized that she only told me the things she wanted me to hear. Before I learned that my wife was cheating on me, our marriage was beautiful and blissful. We were like Louis and Clark. Loved each other so much, and I was always happy to be around her. My wife worked for a top marketing agency in our state and was great at what she did. At least, I believe so because of the promotions she got, the increase in her earnings, and the bonuses. On my end, I worked as a business consultant, but my earnings were less than hers. For once, I was never jealous of her. Instead, I encouraged her to work harder and hit her monthly targets. It was even a relief on my end that she had a great job, and we could collaboratively take care of the bills, rent, and other expenses at home. While we were still together, she told me about how her colleagues in her office hated her for no reason, and I had even noticed the look on their faces once I had to drop her at the office. When she said this, I didn't think it was that serious, and I believed her colleagues acted that way because they felt threatened by my wife's success and the speed she used to climb the ladder. Also, my wife was one of those sassy drama queens that loved to draw attention or be the center of attention wherever she went, and she was a high-taste fashionista who loved to wear expensive things. So, I thought it was also one of the reasons some of her colleagues did not like her. Most times, when she talked about it, we would laugh and joke about them, but it was never anything serious. We were so close that we talked about everything and anything that happened during the day at our different workplaces, and this helped us bond better. When we were dating, I knew my wife was a career-driven woman, and she always said she could do anything to be successful. Whenever she said this, I thought she meant dedication, working harder, committing fully to the organization she worked for, and the other attributes that could make anyone successful. I never knew that she would go as far as giving her body in exchange for success. I honestly believe she earned everything she got from her hard work and dedication to her company. The day I found out, I was cleaning our home office. In the past, it was always my wife that cleaned our home office. But she didn't have time to clean it for a while because she had been so busy with work. Also, our home office was in no condition for use because it was so untidy, so I decided to clean it up. After cleaning, I was trying to move things back and organize them, and that's when I stumbled on a hidden stack of gift cards and receipts for expensive jewelry and other stuff from an undisclosed source. Initially, when I saw them, it didn't make sense to me that they were hidden. I could tell they were hidden because of where I found them. But after going through the gift cards and receipts, I knew something was off. Before I made this discovery, I never questioned my wife about the expensive stuff she wore or bought. I knew she was earning well, and she loved things like that. And I also believed she must have gotten most of them during discount season like she claimed. I knew I would do my own digging, so I returned everything to the position I found them, organized our home office, and waited for her to come home. When she came home, I welcomed her as usual, and we had our regular chats and gossip. Later that night, when she was sleeping, I went through her phone, and to my greatest surprise, I found out she had been sleeping with her boss. This was a shock, but after I went through their conversation, I understood why she got all the bonuses and promotions. I was angry and thought of the best way to pay her back. Then an idea came. Her boss was a very popular man in our state, and that was because his wife was a well-known real estate agent. I decided to find her online, and I got her direct contact in no time. The next day, I contacted her and asked that we meet. When she agreed, we met at a coffee shop, and I presented all the gift cards, receipts, and asked her if her husband gives her as much as he gives my wife. When she saw the screenshot of the text messages I had sent to my phone, and all the receipts and gift cards, she was so mad and heartbroken at the same time. And on my end, I forwarded everything to my wife's company HR, and after an investigation was carried out, she was fired, and her boss was demoted. While all this happened, I confronted my wife and told her I knew she had been sleeping with her boss. At first, she tried to deny it and said I was beginning to sound like her colleagues, but after I showed her the receipts and chats, she began to cry and said she could explain. She said she had to sleep with her boss because she realized that hard work alone would not take her to the level of success she wanted and that she did it for us. When she said she did it for us, I almost lost it. I ended up kicking her out of the house, and by this time, she didn't know I had forwarded everything to her hour. She found out after being fired and was forced to move locations to find a new job. After she moved out of my house, my next step was a divorce. So to make things more difficult for her, I made sure our divorce case was taken to court several hours away from her new workplace. Eventually, we divorced, and she is out of my life for good. I pity the next man she will end up with because she won't stop cheating on her future spouse until she gets the kind of success she wants. Meanwhile, never listen to what women say, especially about their past. My wife told me she had never cheated on any of her partners before and wouldn't do such a thing in the future. But she was getting favors and promotions in exchange for her body the whole time. I have no intentions of being in a relationship anytime soon because, at this moment, my peace of mind is my top priority.